I had a good friend of mine ask me the other day, hey Mike, you got a channel about swords, yet you've not done a review or even shown a Japanese katana. Well, here we go, folks. Let's look at this katana from HanBon Forge. Guys, we are looking at a Japanese katana today from HanBon Forge, which is a Chinese forge out of Longquan, China. They specialize in Japanese as well as Chinese swords, but the cool feature that they have, as well as a number of forges out of China, is you can customize your own Japanese katana, and you can basically adjust the price that you want to spend, anything down from around 150 bucks all the way up to upwards over $500, $600, $700, maybe even into the thousands if that's something that you're interested in. But I decided to go on to HanBon Forge and customize one of my own pieces, or a piece that I should say bears my own artistic style. And I went ahead and designed this sword here on their website. Now, it's worth noting that there are a number of Chinese forgers that offer this service. HanBon Forge is just one out of a handful. Some of the more well-known ones are Swords of Northshire, as well as Ryan Sword, Sino Sword. There are a bunch out there, more than I actually realized. And what I found is that HanBon Forge is actually one of the smaller ones. I haven't actually really heard of them very much, which is why I decided to review a sword from their catalog and have them build me this relatively inexpensive Chinese-made Japanese katana. Now, there's a note I just want to say about this idea that these are made in China and not traditionally handmade or produced with traditional methods in Japan. That is the case. However, these guys over in Longquan, China have been doing sword work and sword smithing and sword forges and operating sword forges for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they're very experienced, and I wouldn't say that they produce things of shoddy workmanship at all. Actually, I think for the money that you spend, you get a very nice product for the most part. Of course, there are exceptions with different companies, and there obviously are varying experiences. However, my general experience with buying swords from some of these Chinese forges is that they actually do very good work and make some of these awesome Japanese katanas very affordable for people to use and take out into their backyard and enjoy historical Japanese swordsmanship, or just enjoy the relatively awesome coolness that comes with the Japanese katana. Okay, my friends, let's look at the sword that I had HanBon Forge build for me. Now, they offer a lot of different ways that you can customize your sword. Everything from the scabbard or the saya that it goes in to this nice sword knot here, to the, I'm going to refer to this as the hilt, although I am aware that's not what it's called, but just for, I'm not very familiar with Japanese swords and swordsmanship and terminology, so I'll call this the hilt. Everything from the handle wrap, which I do know is called the ito, to the semigawa that's underneath here, which is the shark skin, to these fittings here, the kashra, the fuchi, and the suba. You can choose from a variety of different options, as well as of course the blade. You can choose different blade steels, as well as different heat treatments for the blade. Now, what I decided to go with is, of course, this really nice brown saya that has this black speckle on it, which I think is really cool. I decided to go with a very brown theme here, or brown or tan theme. I got the brown sword knot here, which I do have to say is actually quite nice. Some of these can be very, very thin, cheap material. This sword knot actually feels nice and thick and very well done. I went with a brown ito, which is this particular wrap that goes around the handle here. And as you can see, I opted to get this thing called, I think this is called a battle wrap, where these triangles here, I should say these diamonds, don't go all the way up There's a center portion here which is flat, and the manuki, which are these nice dragon pieces here, are placed in the center. I think traditionally there's usually one up here and one down here, but on the battle wrap style, I opted to have this wrap done with the manuki in the center. There's a cherry blossom theme on the fittings. As you can see, it's pretty nicely done. There's the fuchi, and the suba is actually an option that I was really excited to get because it's not something that you commonly see. I mean, generally speaking, the suba is sort of a rounder shape. Now, I am aware that there's many different types of suba, but I decided to go with this smaller, really elegant looking suba that has some cherry blossoms on it, and it's pretty much the same on the top or bottom, and it's actually really nice when you see it up close. Now, I believe it's a cast alloy on all of these fittings. It's not real brass, and that's understandable because designing this whole sword. Oh, one more feature I do want to talk about is the semigawa, or the shark skin or ray skin underneath, is real. I believe they're panels, but it's very nice that you get real shark skin here. I hate it when companies use the fake stuff. I think it's terrible because you can get real shark skin or ray skin relatively cheap because these guys do it. And the handle has the traditional 2 pegs, and I think these are called makugi, and that is how the blade is actually mounted into the hilt using these 2 pegs here. Now, the blade steel that I chose, and they have a bunch of different options, but I chose to go with a through-hardened 9260 spring steel blade. Now, normally a lot of people go with a 1095 differentially hardened blade, which brings out a HanBon, which is a really cool, beautiful pattern, which shows you the differential heat treating of the blade. However, I decided to go with something pretty basic because I wanted to keep the cost down, and I also wanted to get a spring steel blade, just a through hardened spring steel blade. So I decided to go with the 9260 blade, and it actually came extremely sharp, guys. I didn't do anything to this edge yet. I didn't really have to, and it's very sharp. Now, it does have this fuller, which I think is called a bohi. Bear with me, guys. Like I said, I'm not an expert with Japanese terminology on these things, but the bohi runs all the way up to this area called the kasaki, right down into the hilt portion. And I did get a common, very stereotypical brass habaki piece, but they do have other options for that as well. Now, this whole package, this whole build that I did with shipping cost less than $200, and I actually think that that is fantastic. So I think it was around $189 for this build shipped to my house, and it came I think it took about, I want to say about a month for them to produce the sword and send it out, which I think is very acceptable. And overall, everything is very tight. The tolerances are great. The transitions here, if you guys watch Matthew Jensen's channel, he does a great job breaking down the correct way that these things are supposed to be built, these Japanese katanas and Japanese swords. But the transitions here are pretty good. There's no ledges or anything here that is uncomfortable. The casting quality of these is basically something that you would expect for a sword in this price category. They're nicely done. Like I said, they're probably some type of alloy, and everything is very tight. There's no rattling, and everything is really well built. I was actually very surprised at how tight this Ito is and how nicely everything is put together, because I have other swords from Chinese forgers that are around this price range, or some that are actually more expensive, that are not as nicely fit and done as this. So great job, HanBon Forge. This is actually a really nice piece. Yeah, so let's take a look at some test cutting and see how this thing actually performs. I'm going to cut some bottles, I'm going to cut some tatami, and I will give you guys my opinion on whether or not I think it's worth you going over to HanBon Forge's website and building a katana of your own. So let's take a look. All right, guys, the sun is shining. It's a chilly fall day. I got my HanBon Forge Katana. Let's try it on some tatami, see how it goes. I have not yet tried it. I actually have only cut tatami with a katana one other time, so this is the second time I've ever cut tatami with a katana. So let's try it out with some basic cut, see how it goes. All right, pretty easy. It's sailing through this, guys. Right. Oh, scalloped that one a little bit. All right, guys, actually relatively very easy. Nice cutter, really is. Nice. Check that out. Nice cut. Well, here we go, guys. My final opinion of this sword and whether or not I think it's worth your hard-earned money. All right. When judging a sword like this, I think it's really important to take into perspective what it actually is, okay? And what is it? It's a $180-ish mass-produced katana from a Chinese forge. Now, it's not attempting to be a high-end piece. It's not attempting to compete with any high-end options out there that are by renowned swordsmiths or any type of heirloom Japanese swords that are traditionally handmade in Japan by the approved sword guilds or anything like that. This is essentially a mass-produced functional sword that you can get for less than $200. And that being said, I actually think it's a very good sword. I mean, you get a lot for the money. The sword blade is functional, it's sharp, it's pretty durable, although I didn't do any abusive tests on it. I just did what I normally would do. I cut the things and the targets that I like to cut, and it held up great. It came extremely sharp, guys. I didn't have to do anything to this edge. It's aesthetically very pleasing. And you know what? I designed it. It's a custom-made sword, but let's not get it confused with a customized sword by a renowned smith or something like that. This is essentially a mass-produced piece. Yes, I got to choose some certain options like the colors and the fittings and, you know, the blade steel and, you know, the overall aesthetics of the sword. I got to choose from a number of different options, but those are all mass-produced pieces. Essentially, I chose and they put it together, which is a very, very cool and enjoyable option. Now, it's notable, like I've seen higher end katanas, and you know, there's a lot of things about this that just don't live up to those swords, and it shouldn't for 180 bucks. I mean, it really shouldn't. If it does, this is probably the best sword ever made. If you can get a high-end katana for 180 bucks. It does use genuine ray skin. It is very well constructed. The Ito is pretty tight. These fittings, you know, they're mass-produced. Oh, the wind. They are mass-produced fittings that are, you know, rather muddy and rough. However, I think for the money, they do the job just nicely. It's fine. The blade, you know, it doesn't have any exciting aesthetical features like a HanBon or any folding or anything like that. It's just a through hardened 9260 steel blade. It performed well, as you guys could see, and I was very happy with it. There's nothing super special about this sword other than I got to choose the pieces for it. The saya is missing, you know, the horn pieces that are traditionally on the throat here and on the end. Let's call it the end cap of the saya. The saya is well done, but you can tell it's not really the best thing in the world, right? You know, can you expect that for 180 bucks? No. I did have to do a little bit of filing inside the saya here to get the sword to fit correctly, because when I got it, it was it was very tight, and I had a really hard time sheathing and unsheathing the sword. It was like a very tight fit. However, after some relatively simple filing with a very small file, the sword actually fits in the saya very nicely now. And you know, if you do Japanese swordsmanship, you know that you should be able to do, I think you should be able to do a little bit of a push with your thumb to release the habaki from the saya, and the sword should be free. And it does do that. It fits the saya very nicely. There's a little bit of rattle. You see, if you guys can hear that, there's a little bit of rattle. But you know, I sing the praises of the genuine ray skin because I know that there are cheaper, actually there are more expensive katanas that I've had that had fake ray skin, and that really aggravates me. However, when they dyed the ray skin, it's not done particularly well. You can see some spots are like darker or lighter than others, you know. So the choice of materials, the overall quality is, you know, about what you could expect for $180. However, it's very well put together. It's very well built. There's no looseness. There's no shoddy workmanship here. I think if you're interested in enjoying Japanese swordsmanship and enjoying this historic design, that going over to HanBon Forge and spending about $200 or maybe even a little less to get a customized sword, not fully custom, obviously, we just discussed that, but a customized sword that bears some of your artistic interpretation of what you'd like a katana to look like, I think for $180-ish, that's pretty damn good, guys. I'm actually very impressed by it. I didn't think that you could get a functional katana for that price that would be this nice. Does it have a lot of things that it needs to improve on to compete with higher end stuff? Of course. And to expect it to be higher end is just not really keeping into perspective what it actually is. But for what it is fantastic, guys. Oh, did you see that? All right. So anyway, thank you for watching my channel. Thanks for coming by. I hope you enjoyed this review. Please leave a like, subscribe, leave some comments down below. Yeah, stay tuned for another review. Obviously, I try to get them out there as much as I can, but you know, I don't really have that much. As always, guys, thanks again for watching. Enjoy and have a safe rest of your week and whatnot, and enjoy this hobby safely, guys. It's very fun and enjoyable. All right, see you next time.